विनाशाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। Welcome to the study of Great Master Sri Ramakrishna. Now we will all travel to the life of Sri Ramakrishna in Dakshineshwar, where Sri Ramakrishna is about to practice the Advaita Sadhana, or he is going to get sannyasa from Totapuri. During the time of Master's practice of Vedantic discipline, we have to know what is meant by Vedanta. Anta means end. Veda means we all know the Vedas. The Gnana Rashi, heap of knowledge. Veda literally means heap of knowledge. So we are coming to the end of knowledge. We are going beyond knowledge. That is to realize the highest Parabrahman, Nirakara Nirguna Parabrahman, Satchit Ananda, the indivisible consciousness. So that is called Veda Anta, end of Vedas. So now, Master's practice of Vedantic discipline, his paternal cousin, Aladari, was doing the service of Radha Govinda at the Dakshineshwar temple. He was senior to the master in age and had some grasp of scriptures like Bhagavata. He had some grasp of scriptures like Bhagavata. He used to read Bhagavata every day, Adhyatma Ramayana, some other scriptures. He felt proud on that account. So now the Bhagavata, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, or the Upanishads, or the Sanskrit literature, Vedas, Jyotish Shastra, everything, if we learn and start reading, the essence of all those things are nothing but God, and it should remove ego. The more knowledge we gain, we have to become more and more humble. The less knowledge we have, half-baked knowledge, the more egoistic we become. The more and more knowledge we get, humbler we are. The less and less knowledge, half-baked knowledge we have, we become egoistic. So that's why you can see one of the statements, that is, Vidya dadati vinayam. Vidya means knowledge, wisdom. It has to give you vinaya, humility. Vidya dadati vinayam. Then what happens next? Vinayat yati patratvad. The more humble you become, the more humbler I become, then I get more capacity to earn more and more knowledge. Vidya dadati vinayam. Knowledge is to give you humility. Vinayat, by humility, what do you get? Yanti patratvat. You get the capacity to learn more and more knowledge. So that is the effect of Vidya, knowledge or wisdom. The more and more knowledge I get, the more and more humbler I become. Then the more and more humbler you become, that is, ego is reduced, the ego goes away. Then you get more and more capacity to digest more knowledge. Then now we have to see that, how do I get less egoistic? How do I get humbler when I get more knowledge? Any example? See now, the more and more knowledge I go on gaining, I come to realize that I have so much knowledge to gain yet. I have not even learned 1% or 10% of the knowledge of the universe. I've gained only 0.0001%. Maybe the best educated person I may be, but I have gained only very little of this universe. So then I become more humble. What is this? I thought I had so much of knowledge, but there is so much to be learned. As you go on learning more and more, you will come to know that there is so much more to be learned. Another example can be given of Newton. So we all know that even now, after so many years, earlier, even during the time of Swami Vivekananda, Newton was a very great scientist. So now, such a great scientist, such a great man of knowledge, he used to be very humble. It so happened once a man praised him, "Sir, you are such a man of great wisdom and knowledge." To which Newton replied very humbly, "Oh, don't call me man of knowledge or great source of knowledge," or something like that. "Why, sir? You have invented so many things, you know so many things in science and other field of knowledge." To which Newton replied, "What is my knowledge? I'm just collecting," you have to note the words of Newton, "I'm just collecting pebbles. I'm just collecting small stones, pebbles on the shore of knowledge." You know, if the sea or the ocean is compared to the knowledge, source of knowledge, then on the seashore we have the sand. A little away on the land, you will have small bit of mud, stone, and all the other things. As you go, it becomes sand. As you go nearer to the sea, you get the ocean. Now, Newton is telling, I'm just picking, I'm collecting pebbles, small stones on the shore of knowledge. I've not even reached the ocean of knowledge, the sea of knowledge. I've not even reached, I've not even touched. I'm just collecting some pebbles on the shore of knowledge. The sea of knowledge is yet to be touched. I have not even touched it. So that was the humility of Newton, who was considered to be the greatest of scientists of his time, and even now he is considered so. So you can understand, if that is the case, the humility of the person of such a great knowledge, how egoistic we are. Having only little half-baked knowledge, we get so egoistic and bloat, thinking that we are so great, we have so much of knowledge. Then our capacity to earn more knowledge reduces. The more egoistic we are, Ramakrishna in the gospel, he used to always tell, ego is like the mound of mud or stone. You know, the mound of stone or mud, a mound like this. How much ever the grace of knowledge, the grace of Lord, or the grace in the form of knowledge is poured by God upon you, you cannot receive it. Why? Because it's the mound. This knowledge is very minimal, no knowledge at all. You can see the person who is humble, and you should be careful. Humility is not just show of humility. Many people, they show of humility. You'll be very egoistic inside. A lot of ego will be there, but outside, they will surrender to the God. That and this, I fall at your feet. So all in words, but within, so much egoism will be there. So that is not humility. I'm just talking about true, real humility. You know, your heart knows, and the Lord knows how much humble you are, how much egoistic you are. Nobody can deceive our conscience, isn't it? So I'm talking about that humility, true humility. So that's why if we want more knowledge, then we have to become humble. Vidya dadati vinayam. The more knowledge I gain, I get more and more humbler. The more egoistic I am, then my knowledge is less and less and less. So that is what our scripture tells. Vidya dadati vinayam, vinayat yanti patratvat. Okay. Now, this scholar who knew little Bhagavata and other things from Sanskrit, our paternal cousin Haladari was doing the service of Radha Govinda temple at Dakshineshwar. He was senior to Sri Ramakrishna in age by 1 or 2 years and has had some grasp of scriptures like the Bhagavata, Adhyatma Ramayana. Now, I'm so proud of that. I know nobody else knows how to read Bhagavata. I know Sanskrit. I know I do. I read every day. That itself is a cause of ego. Just I'm reading Bhagavata every day. That itself is making him more egoistic. What I wonder, the more you read Bhagavata, the more you learn the stories of Lord Krishna, you should become humble and you should get your devotion increased. But on the contrary, that which is to reduce your ego, reading that itself or knowing that itself is a cause of the ego. So you can see the play of Maya, ignorance. So he felt proud on that account. We have told the reader how he ridiculed the master himself. That's why he couldn't understand the greatness of master, though the Lord lived so near to him in the form of his relative, so close. He is seeing his Leela every day, the greatness, the sadhana, and everything, so close by. But because of ego, he couldn't grasp. He couldn't understand. So even little things, scholarship, even little knowledge is making him egoistic, which is an obstacle to realize God. So that's why many times we have heard in Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna telling, ego is the culprit. Ego is the real Maya. Ego is Maya. How? One devotee was sitting in Dakshineshwar. Ramakrishna held one towel. You know all that towel, big towel. He held it in front of the devotee. Then he asked the devotee, Ramakrishna asked the devotee, can you see me? No, I can't see you. Then Ramakrishna, how is that I'm so near to you? No, the towel is, that piece of big cloth, thick cloth is obstructing us. Then Ramakrishna explained, this is how the Lord God, the highest God, is the most nearest to you, to me, and everybody. Why can't I see him? Why can't I realize, even though God is more nearer than my father and mother, even the Lord who exists in my heart in the Swarupa, in the Atma Swarupa or Parabrahma Swarupa is more nearer to me than my body, is the nearest, but I can't see him. Why? Because ego is obstructing. Ego doesn't allow you, though he is very, very near to you. He's always with you. Why can't you see? Because that layer of ignorance or ego is obstructing. We can't see God, even though he's so near to us. So that in so many ways, Ramakrishna is showing us ego is the main cause. Ego is the main cause, but we are not ready to give up ego. We are not ready to give up ego. What a sad affair, what a sad thing. We all know that when Krishna came, everybody knows that he is the Avatara Purusha, the great Avatar Purusha Krishna. He came to his doorstep. Krishna is coming to the doorstep of Duryodhana so that peace can be made, so that there will be no war. And he is asking, begging, the Lord himself begging, please give just a little of the kingdom. You need not give the whole kingdom, not even the half kingdom. Give 5 villages, he told. Let alone if you divide the whole of India, there'll be so many. Now itself there are more than 800 villages, or even more than that. But Sri Krishna is telling, let there be no war. You can live peacefully. For Pandavas, there are 5 Pandavas, each one village. 5 villages, because they are heir to the whole kingdom. You have unrighteously accepted it. Okay, let us forget all those things. By the game of dice or by so many crooked nature, you have done that with your uncle Shakuni Mama Gandhari's brother, elder brother. You have done all these things. We cannot blame Shakuni also, Shakuni Mama, but it is your bad nature. You have done that. But we don't want war. Let there be peace. So many people will die. Please, I beg you. 5 villages. There will be no war. They will live happily. I will say that there will be no war. But Duryodhana was not ready to give even 5 villages. You know what was the reply? So much of egoism. Duryodhana is the epitome of ego. That's why there is a Sanskrit saying, Ati manat Duryodhana, Ati kamat Ravanaha. Ati kamat, extreme lust. And Ravana had to give up his life. Extreme ego, Ati manat, extreme ego. And Duryodhana had to give up his life. That's what we hear, that from our childhood we used to hear this word in Sanskrit. Atimanat Duryodhanaha Ati Kamat Ravanaha. So intense lust, Ravana had to give up the life. And not only he himself giving the life, so many people in Sri Lanka, his relatives, his own children. They're so happy. He had so many wives. He had such beautiful wife called Mandodari, the best Pativrata, one of the greatest Pativratas. And other wives, there were so many wives. Why did he on the earth go and bring Sita? Wanted that mother of Sita as the wife. He lost all his children, Indrajit, all the children. Gave up his life for his lust. All his relatives, the whole of Sri Lanka, so many people had to give up life. Okay, why? Lust, kama, atikama, Ravana. Duryodhana, the same thing. So many people are losing life. So many people killed. His friends, it killed all his brothers. Everybody had to give up life. So many became widows. So many became orphans. All the cause is Duryodhana. Just his ego. If he had just given up his ego when the Lord himself has come to beg, please give only 5 villages. We don't want war. I will settle. There will be no war. You can live in peace. They will live in peace. Ego. So much ego. What was this reply? What was the reply of Arjuna? Sorry, of Duryodhana? Janami dharmam, nachame pravrittihi. Janamya dharmam, nachame nivrittihi. Kenapi devena hridi sthitena yatha niyuktosmi tatha karomi. Out of so much of ego is telling, Janami dharma. I know what is righteousness. Nachame pravrittihi. I don't have the inclination to follow it. Is read. He was a great scholar because all the kings during that time had to undergo the training in righteousness, Dharma Shastra, and everything. They had to read all the scriptures. In spite of reading scriptures, it has increased his ego, just like here, Haladari. So he's telling, Janami dharmam, I know what is righteousness. Nachame pravrittihi, I don't have the inclination to follow it. Janami adharmam, I know what is unrighteousness, what is wrong, what is bad, which should not be done. Nachame nivrittihi, I don't want to give it up. I don't want to give up the unrighteousness. That was the reply. When the Lord himself, in the form of Krishna, Paramatma Swarupa, Bhagavan Swayam, has come to plead for the sake of peace. Let there be no war. People should not die. Please give at least 5 villages. Do you know what was the egoistic reply of Duryodhana? Told, let alone 5 villages. I am not ready to give even, on the top of the needle. The sharp of the edge of the needle has very small space because that's why it is so sharp. Because the needle is so sharp, because the edge is so small, thin. So it can puncture your skin, acupuncture. So I will not give even the land worth of the top of the needle. That was the egoistic reply of Duryodhana. See what happened. So much of calamity. He has to die. So many widows, so many orphans. His own brothers, all his kith and kin brothers, his father and mother had to shed tears. So much of disaster happened. Why? Because of ego, his strong ego. So we have to learn from all these things. These are all not just stories to be heard and forgotten. What am I causing harm? Because of my ego, because of my ignorance. How am I troubling my family members? How am I troubling all the people around me? What should I do then? Should I not give up that ego? Many people think that, oh, that husband is all at wrong. Oh, the wife is at wrong. The children are egoistic. But they will not look at their own ego. What is that causing the problem? See, you cannot clap with one hand. The sound doesn't come if you have only one hand. There should be two hands. So the other person's ego will also be cause. Both husband and wife will be the cause of this thing. But we will so nicely hide the things that no, the other person is the cause. So we are not at all bothered. What is the impact on the family? What will it happen? What will our children suffer? Oh, let them suffer. My ego, my prestige is important. Let them die. Let them go away. Who cares? My ego, my prestige is more important. And after that, they will tell, see, Swamiji is telling, it is for him, for him. But they will never take that. The Lord is telling that for him, to show it to others, but they won't want to correct their egos. So all these things is so near to Ramakrishna. He's living with Ramakrishna. Because of ego, he couldn't understand. He had to undergo so much of suffering because of the ego. He felt proud on that account of just knowing little scriptures. We have told the reader how he ridiculed the master. He used to criticize and ridicule, make fun of Sri Ramakrishna. Why? Because he knows little Bhagavata, little Sanskrit. So that itself is making him egoistic, and he is going to the extent of ridiculing the Avatar Purusha himself, though he is living so near to him. So that is the case with us too. There's no need of looking at Haladari and laughing at him. Haladari is only a character which Ramakrishna is keeping near him to show that character is present in me, in all of us. How should I remove that character? We have to understand, analyze. Have I anything like that? We have it. Maybe it differs in degree. It may be more than Haladari. It may be equal to Haladari, that egoism. So we have to analyze, we have to connect. Otherwise, that is the reason we are doing so much of sadhana, we are doing so much of karma yoga. Why no progress? Because you are not giving up ego which has to be given up. Ramakrishna gives the beautiful example of 7 oarsmen, the boatmen. They went to the tavern, so they drank a lot of alcohol. The night, they came fully intoxicated, sat in the boat and started rowing to go back to cross the river to their village. They rowed and rowed and rowed and rowed. The whole night they rowed. But they never reached the destination, the other bank. Then morning, sunrise could be seen. Still they are rowing, but they have never gone even an inch forward. Why? Because they have not removed the anchor at all, anchor of the boat. They have not removed the rope which has been tied to that pole there. So because they were intoxicated, they rowed and rowed and rowed the whole night. The boat has not moved even an inch. They're not away. Why? Because of that intoxication. So we are intoxicated with that ego, so much of ego in us. In spite of all the hard work, not even an inch of spiritual progress. Why? Ego is not allowing us. So until we give up ego, no progress. That's why you can see, though the Avatar Purusha is near him, he's ridiculing him, criticizing him. You can't understand how much blessings could he have gone, he could have got. So he felt proud on that account. we have told the reader how he ridiculed the master, how he criticized his spiritual visions. When Ramakrishna used to tell that about his visions, he used to criticize those visions and states, whatever his spiritual states, as due to the derangement of the brain. How pained at it the master would run up to the Divine Mother, it would pain Sri Ramakrishna. And because of that pain, because he's a scholar, he knows Sanskrit, he knows Bhagavata, he knows some scriptures. So maybe whatever Haladari is telling might be true. Ramakrishna would get a lot of pain in the heart. Like a child used to run to Divine Mother for consolation, telling Mother, you cheated me. I thought you have given you a vision. Haladari is telling that all that is hallucination. Have you deceived me, Mother, because I am unlettered? I am ignorant fool. Have you deceived me, Mother? So Ramakrishna used to go and cry, shed tears, run to Mother, Divine Mother. See how much ego, because of this ego, it is paining the heart of the Avatar Purusha. Because of your and my ego, it will pain so many heart of people around us. And who exists in the heart of everybody? Is Ramakrishna only. It is Narayana only. And Narayana is pained. We know that we have heard from Mother Parvati to Ganesha in that Ganesha story. In every female beings, it is the Divine Mother who exists. In all the male beings, it is Lord Shiva who exists. And with our ego, we pain all the women folks. And we are directly, the mother, Ganesha just did some pinching and this thing to the she-cat. The whole body and the face of Mother, Divine Mother was with wound and pain and bleeding. So like that, you may be thinking, oh, Haladari did it, Haladari did it. No, even now we are doing that. Why? Because of our ego, wrong our attitude. We are hurting all the people around. And who is it reaching to? My own Ishtadevata, Narayana or Shiva or Ramakrishna. So even now, the Haladari in me, the ego in us, he is troubling Ramakrishna and Mother Sharda Devi at every inch. And we will be always pointing, oh, that person, this person. We don't look at our own heart. See, when you point one finger at another, 3 fingers are pointing at you. So much of fault in us. So, we have told the reader how Haladari ridiculed the master, criticized his spiritual visions and states as due to derangement of the brain. How pained at it the master would run up to the Divine Mother for consultation. How he was again and again consoled by her. So because he used to run and cry, then Mother had to come and console the child, the divine child. So, and how Ramakrishna was again and again consoled by the Divine Mother, and how on one occasion of Haladari's ridicule in this way, the master went into an ecstasy in which he had the vision of a beautiful figure which instructed him to remain in Bhavamukha. We have explained about Bhavamukha, the threshold. Bhavamukha is the threshold, whereby if you keep a lamp on the threshold or there are 2 rooms, there will be a wall. So there is a space on the wall. If you keep the lamp on that threshold or on the wall, both the rooms will be illumined. So that state is called Bhavamukha. So if you stay at the place threshold where you can see both the spiritual, the Satchit Ananda, the indivisible Parabrahman, God's kingdom, and this world, created universe, you are on the threshold, then you can see both. So you will be in touch with the Paramatma Swarupa, the divinity Akhanda Satchidananda, and also you will be in touch with the world. So that state where Ramakrishna was asked to be in that state, Bhavamukha, where you can be in touch with both the infinity or God's kingdom and also the world, the created universe, that is called Bhavamukha. So many times Divine Mother in different forms came to Sri Ramakrishna and told, stay in Bhavamukha, be in Bhavamukha, then you will not be hurt, you can understand So remain in Bhavamukha. These events we infer came to pass shortly after he began practicing the Vedantic discipline. Seeing the master wear cloths, ornaments, etc., meant for ladies while he was practicing the Madhura Bhava and live in the mood of woman at the time of practicing the Madhura Bhava, Haladari concluded that Ramakrishna was devoid of self knowledge. When Totapuri, the itinerant Paramahamsa, came to Dakshineshwar and lived there, Haladari, we have heard from the master himself, was living at the Kali temple and used to have discussions on the scriptures with Totapuri, the great Vedantic monk, from time to time. One day, when Tota and Haladari were thus discussing the Adhyatma Ramayana, just like what we have the Valmiki Ramayana, the original one, and the Tulsidas has written the Ramcharitmanas. Like that, if you go to Gujarat, there will be another Ramayana. If you go to Bengal, there is the Krittivasa Ramayana. If you go to Tamil Nadu, there is the Kamba Ramayana. Then if you go to Karnataka, there will be another Ramayana. So like that, everywhere there will be different written by those people, versions. Likewise, there is another version of the Ramayana where Rama is considered as the highest Parabrahman and the highest Advaitic knowledge is discussed there, that is called Adhyatma Ramayana. So that is full with terse Vedantic knowledge only, the highest Vedantic knowledge, everything. So that Adhyatma Ramayana was being discussed there by Totapuri and Haladari. And some other Vedantic things were also discussed there. So now, one such occasions, one day when Totapuri and Haladari were thus discussing the Adhyatma Ramayana, the master had the vision of Rama along with Sita and Lakshmana. When they were discussing the Adhyatma Ramayana, both Totapuri and Haladari, hearing that discussion, Ramakrishna is having the vision of Sri Ramachandra along with Mother Sita and Lakshmana. Tota came to Dakshineshwar probably by the end of 1865. A few months after, the meaning of Tota in Hindi or in the North Indian language, Tota means parrot. Tota means parrot. A few months after Haladari retired from service as the priest of the mother owing to the ill health and other reasons, and Akshaya, Ramkumar's son, the master's nephew, was appointed in his place. It is the nature of a devotee that he never tries to realize the state of liberation described as Sayujya. It's the nature of the devotee. Devotee means one who wants to enjoy the beauty of the Lord in the form, with form and attributes. So such a person who likes personal God, worship of the God with form, the devotee, he never tries to realize the state of liberation described as Sayujya or identification with the divine Lord. In liberation, in Mukti, Moksha, there are three types told in our scriptures. Sayujya Mukti is one of them. Sayujya means identifying with the Lord, becoming one with the Lord. That is called Sayujya. What are the other two Muktis, Mokshas, liberation? Samipya, staying very near to the Lord, moving always with the Lord. Suppose you are so much inclined towards the devotion, you are a devotee, great devotee of Lord Vishnu. So you will be, or Narayana, you will be staying there with Narayana or Vishnu in Vaikunta. Always, wherever the Lord moves, you will be always moving with him. You will be looking at Narayana, Vishnu in Vaikunta always. You will not remove your eyes at all. You will be always looking at him. You will be always with him. That is called Samipya Mukti, staying very close to the Lord, Samipya. So before starting the puja, we tell the mantra, Tad Vishnoho Paramam Padam Sada Pashyanti Surayaha. The great people of knowledge will be always looking Surayaha. Tad Vishnoho Paramam Padam. That Vishnu, Paramam Padam, the highest place. Sada Pashyanti Surayaha Diviva Chakshura Tatam. Om Apavitra Pavitrova. That is the mantra, we tell that before puja. So these people, the great devotees, they don't want to merge and become one with the Lord. They want to stay separate and always look at the Lord, their Ishtadevata. Or you go to Kailasa, you'll be the devotees of Shiva. They'll be always residing near Shiva, serving him, looking at him always. Like that, the devotees of Devi, Divine Mother, they will take such a form and stay near the Mother and always looking at Divine Mother. Be near. Samipya Mukti. Then there is another liberation called Sarupya. They are so much meditating on the Lord, they themselves, they can't give up, just like the gopis when they were thinking, when Krishna went away, they started thinking themselves as Lord Krishna. Likewise, here the devotee of after meditating so much, always thinking, they become Lord Krishna or Lord Vishnu or Lord Shiva themselves. They will get the form of Vishnu. So if you go to Vaikuntha, they tell that there will be so many Vishnus moving around. So many Vishnus are there. You will get surprised. What is this? There are so many Vishnus. They're all devotees like you and me who are meditating on Lord Vishnu so much or Narayana so much that they have got the form or this thing of Vishnu or Narayana. They will be like Vishnu because they are meditated so much on Narayana, they become like Vishnu. That is called Sarupya. They become the Rupa of Vishnu they have got, or the Rupa of Shiva they will get. Sarupya, Mukti, then Samipya, always staying nearby. You will retain your form. Just like you are, you will retain and you will be always near, residing near Vishnu or Narayana or Shiva or Devi and serving, always looking at him. Samipya Mukti. Then this Sayujya Mukti, another highest. What is that? Nothing highest or lowest. Another Mukti is Sayujya. What is that? Identification. So it's the nature of the devotees. The devotees will never like to have this Sayujya, becoming one with the Lord. Never tries to realize the state of liberation described as Sayujya or identification with the Divine Lord, and as Nirvana or bodilessness. So that Nirvana or bodilessness, they don't want to have, the devotees don't want to have. They want to have their separate identity as devotees, and they want to be near the Lord and serving him, always looking at him. He always tried to enjoy the glory of the various forms and noble qualities of God with the help of particular devotional moods. The saying of Ramaprasad, one of the great devotee, a poet of Divine Mother Devi. So he describes this attitude of the devotee as, I don't like to become sugar, but I want to taste sugar. So Ramaprasad is telling, I don't want to become sugar, but I want to taste sugar. So I don't want to be one with the Lord, identify one with the Lord. I want to be separate and enjoy the beauty, enjoy the service of the Lord, the form of the Lord. So the saying of Ramaprasad, the devotee of Divine Mother Devi, what is that? In his poetry or in his devotional songs, he tells, I don't like to become sugar, but I want to taste sugar. It is well known as the natural outburst of the heartfelt emotion of the devotees. Therefore, the master's effort to attain the non-dual state of consciousness, the Ramakrishna's effort to attain the non-dual state of consciousness, that is bodilessness, one with the Atma, Paramatma, Satchit Ananda, Akhanda Satchidananda, merge in that Parabrahma. Therefore, the master's effort to attain the non-dual state of consciousness beyond all devotional moods, may appear to be contradictory to many. How could Ramakrishna, who was such a great devotee, go to attain the oneness with that Brahman, Satchidananda? So it may look the devotional, beyond all devotional moods, that non-dual state of consciousness which Sri Ramakrishna wanted to attain. So it may appear to normal devotees that contradictory to many. But we should remember before arriving at such a conclusion that the master was not now capable of taking the initiative in doing anything because he has surrendered himself to the will of the divine. So he doesn't have any individual ego, he doesn't have any individuality. So he's completely under the Lord has taken over. So the highest Lord himself is now appearing or acting to through Ramakrishna. That's why Ramakrishna is not going to decide. It is the Divine Mother or the Lord himself, the highest Gadadhara Vishnu, the ancient being, has taken over now. He is deciding what to do. So he has become just the child of the mother, the devotee. But we should remember, before arriving at such conclusion, that the master was not now capable of taking the initiative in doing anything. The child of the Divine Mother that he was, the master depended entirely on her, placed full reliance upon her, and felt highly delighted in being moved about and guided by her always and in every way. The Divine Mother, for her part, the Divine Mother, for her part, took upon herself all his responsibilities. And with a view to accomplishing a particular purpose of hers, cast him, without his knowledge, into quite a new mold. Through the revelation that came on him due to the mother's will, the master came to know what that particular purpose of his life was. Why has he taken this human form? Ramakrishna has come to know it is not for himself to gain some mukti or gain some joy of the liberation. He has not come for that. He has come to do good to the humanity, to show the spiritual part to the people like us, all the human beings, to lift us up to his level. So Ramakrishna came to know about that. Master came to know what that particular purpose of his life was towards the end of all his sadhanas. And it was because of this knowledge that he bore with delight the great responsibility. He bore with delight the great responsibility of doing good to humanity, Loka Kalyana, doing good to humanity. Thus, thirst upon him by the Divine Mother, with whom he was fully one in devotion and love, through keeping himself just a little separate, through keeping himself just a little separate as an individual personality. Just to enjoy that presence of Divine Mother, he had kept his individuality a little, so that he can enjoy the Leela, the world of the Divine Mother. There is another point of view also. So we can think about it in from another point of view also. What is that? Sharadanandaji Maharaj is explaining. There is another point of view also, which reveals the rationale of his adopting the non-dual mode. What is the rationale behind him accepting to practice this non-dual mode? The one without the second, the Advaita and everything of the form, the devotion, everything has to be given up, but to go beyond all the modes. So how is it was possible? So Sharadanandaji Maharaj is trying to explain through another angle. So, which reveals the rationale of his adopting the non-dual mode after gaining perfection in the discipline of Madhura Bhava. He's reached the zenith, the acme, the highest in devotional mode. So why did he accept after that to practice the non-dual mode? The relation of the realm of devotional modes to that beyond them is one of effect to cause. For the relation of the realm of devotional modes to that beyond them, there is the one without the second, the Advaita, the Turiya, is one of effect and cause. This is the effect, and that one without the second, highest consciousness, Satchit, Ananda, Parabrahma, Swarupa, formless, attributeless, is the cause for the immense bliss of the realm of non-duality. For the immense bliss of realm of non-duality, which is beyond all loving moods, limits itself and then manifests as the enjoyment of the bliss of the sight, touch, etc., of the realm of those moods. Where then, except to the plane of non-duality, could his mind go? When he had reached the ultimate limit of the Madhura Bhava, so he's reached everything, he has enjoyed everything in the devotional world. There's nothing to be enjoyed. So he wanted also to see what is that? What is there? That Satchidananda, what is there in infinity? I should go and see. I have seen all these things in this created universe. There is something beyond that. Let me go and see what it is also. So you can take that in that way too. Curiosity to know what is there. So Ramakrishna wanted to go there, enjoy, immerse in that formless, attributeless Parabrahma. So for the immense bliss of realm of non-duality, immense bliss, infinite bliss, which is beyond all loving moods, that is the devotional moods, limits itself and then manifests as the enjoyment of the bliss of sight, touch, etc. That highest mood, that highest joy, the infinite joy, the immense bliss of that realm of non-duality, that when it comes to this earth, it limits itself, that bliss, and that is the only joy, pleasure, and other things we get through the senses. It becomes so paltry and so small. So that immense bliss of the realm of non-duality, which is beyond all loving moods, limits itself and then manifests as the enjoyment of the bliss of the sight, touch, the sense joys as the sense objects, etc., of the realm of those moods. So even whatever you enjoy in the devotional mode, whatever highest joy you may be having, they are compared to that highest bliss, small, very small. It's immense. So where then, except to the plane of non-duality, could his mind go? So Ramakrishna also wanted to taste that. What is that infinite bliss? Let me go and enjoy that too. When he had reached the ultimate limit of the Madhura Bhava, which is the final stage of the realm of devotional modes. Although the above argument is quite reasonable, the following event proves, however, that the master launched on the practice of the non-dual mode only after he received the hint from the Divine Mother herself. So, though all this we can reason it out, we can give a logical explanation in this way, giving so many different angles. Whatever it may be said and done, although the above argument is quite reasonable, the following event proves, however, that the master launched on the practice of the non-dual mode only after he received the hint from Avatarini, Mother Kali, Divine Mother herself, desirous of bathing in the confluence of the sea and the Ganga, and of having the vision of Sri Jagannatha at Puri, the itinerant teacher, Tota Puri. So he was desirous of bathing, visiting the pilgrimage places, that is the confluence of the sea and the Ganga. Ganga flows down, it starts in the Himalayas, Gangotri, then comes to from Uttaranchal, it will come to the plains in the UP, Uttar Pradesh, and it passes through UP, Uttar Pradesh, and reaches Bihar. It flows through Bihar, then enters Bengal. So from Bengal, it goes down to the end and reaches the Bay of Bengal, the sea. So now that place is very sacred. The confluence of the river Ganga and the sea. It is called Ganga Sagar. It is 120 kilometers from Calcutta. Millions and millions people visit there to take a bath in that place. The Kapila Ashrama is also there, and all the grandson or the sons of that Sagara, Bhagirath's ancestors, who had lost their life, the body was burnt by Kapila Maharshi because of their folly. So if Ganga would flow on them, they would get liberation. So Bhagirath with great austerity brought down Ganga and made to flow there, and they all got liberation. So that is a sacred confluence. There's so many other Mahima, great things are there. So now as an itinerant monk, Totapuri was visiting all the pilgrimage sites. So he wanted to go and see this, take bath there in Ganga Sagar, the confluence of Ganga and the sea. And also he was on the way to Puri Jagannatha, which is in Orissa. So all that falls on the way. Ganga Sagar is 120 kilometers from there, and Puri Jagannatha is another 600 or 700 kilometers from there. So it's all on the way. So that's why desirous of bathing in the confluence of sea and the Ganga, and of having the vision of Sri Jagannatha Puri at Puri, the itinerant teacher. The itinerant means one who moves on foot, walking everywhere, begging alms, thinking of God, staying there, no house, homeless, staying under the tree, staying in the temple, wherever destiny takes him. So doing sadhana, thinking, meditating, and moving about. So that person, such sadhus are called itinerant monks. We know that Swami Vivekananda also went round whole of India on his foot without any penny in his pocket. So we call Swami Vivekananda's that life as itinerant life or itinerant monk. See here, Totapuri also as the itinerant teacher, Tota came wandering at will from central India to Bengal. He was merged in spiritual practices on the banks of the holy river Narmada. So Narmada. So that river Narmada is in Madhya Pradesh, central India. It starts in Madhya Pradesh, Amarkantak, a place called Amarkantak. Earlier, Madhya Pradesh was a very big state. Now it is divided, where the tribal dominated area has been made into another state. So Narmada starts at Amarkantak as a small stream, then it flows. Two streams starts there, two river. One is called the younger brother of Narmada. There's another small stream. Then it goes and merges after some distance. That is the brother. It is Nada. There are two types of rivers. In Sanskrit, one is Pullinga, that is masculine, and another is feminine. So the feminine river is called Nadi, Strilinga. The masculine rivers are called Nada, Pullinga. So this is one of the Nada, and Narmada is Nadi, Strilinga. Is there any other Nada, masculine river? Yeah, Brahmaputra. See, Putra, son, Brahma's son, Brahmaputra, that river. It starts from Manasa Sarovar in Tibet. Now China is illegally occupied it. It is all a part of Akhanda Bharata, big undivided India. So Tibet. So the Kailasa, Manasa Sarovar are very nearby there. So it starts from Manasa Sarovar. Then it goes on picking speed and becoming bigger and bigger. It enters inside through Arunachal Pradesh, then it comes to go to Bangladesh, then Bengal, then it goes to the sea there. So Brahmaputra, that is also another. So likewise, Narmada is one of the famous Sapta Nadis, the important celestial Nadis, which we always pray as very divine, who were in the realm of that solar orb, celestial Nadis. We all invoke them during puja by telling the mantra Om Gange cha Yamune chaiva Godavari Saraswati Narmade Sindhu Kaveri Jale Asmin Saniding Kuru. So 7, all that great tirthas, the great nadis, purifying, who remove our sins, or all you have to take bath in all of them. What are those nadis? Ganga, Gange, Cha means cha means and. Yamuna. Chaiva, cha eva, Godavari, Saraswati, Narmade, Sindhu, Kaveri. These are the 7 rivers. So Narmade, what is her speciality? Why people live on the banks and do sadhana? So if Ganga is for the people who want to die, if anybody dies on the bank of Ganga or in the river of Ganga, they get liberation, their papa will be removed. But Ganga Nadi is not meant for sadhakas, sannyasis or sadhakas who do sadhana. So it is Narmada Nadi. If you want to do sadhana, if you want to do spiritual practices, it is on the bank of Narmada. Why? She herself is a spiritual aspirant. So how was she born? She is called the daughter of Lord Shiva. How? They don't have a, Shiva doesn't have a daughter. Shiva has only 2 sons, Ganesha and Kartikeya. How can she be called the daughter? Yeah. The story is when Lord Shiva was ready with the bow and arrow, he opened that bow and arrow attached to that bow, ready to shoot it. Shoot what? The 3 Tripura. That's why Shiva is called Tripurari. Nobody could destroy that cities, 3 cities of the demon. That got a special boon. Those 3 demons, they had made 3 cities, big cities. They were just floating in the air. It was not on the ground at all. So it will be floating on in that, just like our present day satellites. It will be going around the world like that. They had built cities by the boon of the Lord, which were floating, going around like satellites. So what was the condition that to destroy it? That has to come in the single row. Then a person should shoot it at a time. If you hit one and not others, it will not get destroyed. If you have to hit it and destroy all the 3 together. And that too, when it comes in alignment, that was the boon they had asked. So nobody could do that except Lord Shiva. Nobody could pull that, complete the task. So Shiva, now because they became the asuras, the demons became too aggressive and unrighteous, and because they were invincible, they started troubling and torturing the people. So now when all the gods and goddesses pleaded Lord Shiva to destroy them, then Shiva agreed, yes, their sin has become too much, so I have to destroy them. So the city was about to be destroyed by his arrow. So he pulled the bow, the arrow was put into the bow and he pulled it. He was waiting for all the city to come in alignment, all the Tripura, 3 cities to come, that satellites come in alignment. So while he was waiting with the bow and the arrow, with the aim, focus on those 3 cities, then for a long time he had to wait. While you're waiting, pulling this thing with so much of force, naturally when you're focusing, you will start sweating. So Lord Shiva also started sweating. So that river Narmada originated from the sweat of Lord Shiva. So that's why it is called Shivaputri. That's why if you go on the bank of walking, there's sadhana. I've reached that Amarkantak, at Omkareshwar and all the places. Some of the places there on the bank of this thing. So the Baneshwar Linga, we get that Shivalinga, always the presence of Lord Shiva will be there. The stone emblem. Wherever you go in the bank of Narmada, the stone, whichever stone you pick up, there will be presence of Lord Shiva in it. That is called Baneshwara Linga. They take it and bring it, worship in all of our ashramas. You can see that Baneshwara Linga. So this river is the daughter of Shiva, Narmada. So she herself is a spiritual aspirant meditating on Lord Shiva, the highest. And also anybody trying to do sadhana, spiritual practices on her bank, she takes care of them with a lot of giving all their necessities, providing them food. So if you stay on her bank, she will provide food somehow. one day for that sadhaka. One day food is enough for a sadhaka. So she will provide whatever might be the condition on the bank of Narmada. Our sadhus, our own Ramakrishna Ashrama sadhus have tested it. They knew that Narmada will provide food to anybody, any sadhaka practicing spiritual practices on there. While sitting and practicing there, used to get food. Many people, devotees used to bring, the tribals used to bring and give them food. Anybody practicing sadhana. One day he wanted to test Mother Narmada's that name that she will give food and looks after all the devotees who are doing sadhana on her bank. So he swam in the river and reached an island because that river becomes too big at some places and some island formation takes place in the forest, dense jungle. It passes through many jungles too, forests too. So he swam where no people were there. He went into that island where no people can reach and sat there for meditation. One of our Swamis, long back. And lo, one tribal swam into that place with a tiffin carrier, food, and started providing him their food. So Mother Narmada will be always taking care of the devotees who are practicing spiritual practices on the bank. So for sadhakas to do sadhana, it's river Narmada. No other river. There is a practice by Hindus of circumambulating. You know circumambulation. Circumambulation is pradakshina. So only river Narmada, the devotees, both householders and monks, they do this circumambulation. They will start from the Amarkantak, where Narmada begins her journey, originates, the Gomukha is there. They will do puja in the temple of Mother Narmada. And any tribal girl there, the local tribal girl, will be worshipped, a small girl will be worshipped as Mother Narmada. They will give her some money, they will worship her, give her sweet, thinking that she is herself the Narmada, the tribal girl will be worshipped there. And then they will start the journey. So you should not cross the river at any place. So if you start at one place, you should go on walking. So all the places they walk more than 1,600 kilometers or so, they will reach the sea. In Gujarat, it will pass through Madhya Pradesh, it will go to Gujarat. Then it will reach the sea there in Gujarat. So there, if you go to the end, there the devotees of Narmada or the Shiva devotees or the Gujaratis there will be waiting with boats to make you cross through the sea to the other area. If you want, you can give money for the launch and other things, but there the devotees will be thinking to gain merit to helping the devotees. Free boat service will be there to take you to the other side in the sea. So you will be made to go to the other side. Then from there you can start walking. Again, come back to Amarkantak. Again, worship the Divine Mother in the form of a small tribal girl there, giving her sweet, giving her money and doing the worship. And then your journey finishes. So tremendous change happened in that people. Many of our sadhus from Ramakrishna Ashrama have done that. Narmada Parikrama it is called. Narmada Parikrama. So no other river such thing practice is there. It is only Narmada because she will look after all the devotees. She is Shiva Putri. Any aspirant, spiritual aspirant, she will look after their needs and everything. Help them to practice sadhana. Even now, so many sadhus, they do sadhana. Some of our older sadhus also, they go. Many of them have done the Narmada Parikrama. One Swamiji was of my batch, same batch, Sannyasa. He's a pediatrics doctor. He's now in Kashi, Ravindra Maharaj. So he's a pediatrician. He's looking after the hospital there in Kashi, our Varanasi Ashrama. So he started moving, going there, doing the parikrama. So while he was walking, generally they have to walk barefoot. That is the rules. So he was living in a very different condition there in Kashi or some other center. So he was not used to going barefoot for a long period. So thousands of kilometers you have to walk barefooted. So if it was just 1 day or 2 days, okay, your leg can withstand whatever you might be doing, the hardship. But it is for thousands of kilometers. How can it be? More than you have to walk for 6 or 8 or 1 year, 6 months or 1 year. It depends upon the speed you walk. What is your strength? So there is nothing you should carry. Nothing should be carried. You should just walk and walk. You have to beg food, do sadhana on the bank. That's all. It will be forest, it will be thorns, it will be stones, it will be the bank of the river everywhere, and there may be wild animals. Great monk Totapuri. So he was earlier practicing sadhana on this bank of this river Narmada. Now he desirous of visiting these sacred places like Ganga Sagar and Jagannath Puri, started coming there, walking there. So he was merged in spiritual practices, Totapuri, on the bank of the holy river Narmada, where he lived alone for a very, very long time and attained the immediate knowledge of Brahman. For 40 years, they had done sadhana on the bank of Narmada. And he realized the oneness with Paramatma Swarupa Parabrahman, Nirakar Nirguna Parabrahma, that bliss of one without second, non-dual knowledge, Advaita knowledge he had attained. 40 years he did sadhana on the bank of Mother Narmada. So he had attained the immediate knowledge of Brahman by practicing disciplines leading to the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the highest experience, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. What is this Nirvikalpa Samadhi? It is explained about that in the Raj Yoga. Patanjali Maharshi explains it. What is this Nirvikalpa? No Vikalpa. No subject-object relationship. We all see this world because I become the subject and I objectify everything around me. Then I understand all this world. So there is the difference between subject and the object. When you construe a sentence, it is always there. What is a sentence? Sentence is a combination of subject and the predicate, all those things. We are going to explain that. So subject and object relationship, the whole world is understood. So in this Nirvikalpa Samadhi, this is lost. Only the subject remains. Even you can't call it subject. There is no two, only one. The eternal subject. So that is called Nirvikalpa, no Vikalpa, no subject object. Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That is the highest state. So immediate knowledge of Brahman by practicing disciplines leading to Nirvikalpa, the highest experience, Samadhi. The old monks of that place bear witness to this fact even now. You go to the bank of this thing, there is that ashrama where he lived or the place where he did sadhana. The old monks of that place bear witness to this fact even now. This is told by Sharadanandaji Maharaj during the period of Sharadanandaji. It's not now, means not now, 2020. If you go there and do some research, you may find it now too. But the monks of his period are not living now. Sharadanandaji is telling during his period when he went there to do the research to those places, investigate. The old monks of that place where Totapuri did that sadhana, they bear witness to this fact, that is, he did so much of sadhana and got Nirvikalpa Samadhi there in that place. When he realized Brahman, there is God in the highest, without form, without attributes. When Totapuri realized Brahman in this way, a desire, after he gained Samadhi, the highest, so generally they will be full with bliss. They want to share it with others. So they will leave that place and go on sharing their knowledge, giving their knowledge to other people so that they also can attain that. They also can reach that. The suffering humanity can reach that. So they want to distribute that joy to everybody. So now, after gaining that Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the highest, Totapuri, when he realized Brahman in this way, a desire to wander at will arose in his mind, and under the impulse of that urge, he now came to eastern India and traveled from one place of pilgrimage to another. A knower of Brahman, he has realized the highest truth. Knower of Brahman is ever content in the self. Atmanye vatmana tushtaha sthita pragnas tadochyate. Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna he tells about the Sthita Prajna who is realized Parabrahman and is still residing in this world. So about him, the perfect human being, Lord Krishna tells in the Siddhapragna Lakshana, when Arjuna asks him, how does the man of realization live? What does he do? Then Krishna tells these words about him. Atmanyevatmana tushtaha siddhapragnastadochyate. What is that? Here also Sharada Prabhuji is telling the same thing. A knower of Brahman is ever content in his own self. Is ever content in his own self. When he is in Samadhi, he is merged in Brahman. At other times, he sees the whole universe as a manifestation of Brahman through Maya and engages himself in visiting temples, holy men, and places of pilgrimage, experiencing Brahman, that highest Godhead, formless God, experiencing Brahman in all of them. Following this practice, Totapuri, the knower of Brahman, began visiting temples and holy men and places of pilgrimage. After realizing that highest Godhead, that is Parabrahma Swarupa, one without the second, non-dual knowledge, and seeing the manifestation of that Brahman through Maya in this created world, he started visiting pilgrimages, temples, rivers, and all the other places, enjoying that Parabrahman in everything. He came to Dakshineshwar. On his way back to the northwestern parts of the country, after visiting the two places of pilgrimage mentioned above, after visiting Puri Jagannatha and Ganga Sagar, he came to Dakshineshwar. It was not customary with him to spend more than 3 days in one place. That is the tradition of the sadhus. The itinerant monks will not stay in one place for more than 3 days, because after the third day, you will start getting attachment to that place. Sadhus should not get attached. So to give up that attachment so that he should not get into this worldly mode again, so the sadhus, itinerant monks will not stay in one place more than 3 days. At a time, they may stay there for 3 days and meditate, and from there they will leave, go on walking another place, so that they should not develop attachment to any place or any people. That is a practice. There is a saying in Hindi, Bhata Pani, Ramata Sadhu. Bhata Pani means flowing water, the water that flows. Ramata Sadhu, the sadhu that goes around, not staying at one place. They remain pure. The water stays at one place without moving, it becomes stagnant and impure. All dirt and squalor starts getting into it. Similarly, if the water doesn't flow, then all the impurities and stagnation starts. So even if the sadhu doesn't move about, stays at one place, then this attachment, all impurity will get into him. That's the saying in Hindi. Bhata Pani Ramata Sadhu. So they will be always pure. That's the saying in Hindi. So the sadhus, itinerant monks, will not stay at one place. They'll be going on moving. At one place, they will, more than 3 days, they will not stay at any place. So following this practice, Totapuri, an knower of Brahman, began visiting places and holy men and places of pilgrimage, experiencing the Lord, Parabrahman, the highest Godhead, in the formless aspect and attributeless aspect in them. He came to Dakshineshwar. On his way back to the northwestern parts of this country, after visiting the two places of pilgrimage mentioned above, it was not customary with him or any sadhus, itinerant monks, it was not customary with him to spend more than 3 days at one place. He therefore came to the Kali temple to spend there 3 days only. He did not at first understand that in her inscrutable sport, the mother of the universe was the reason she brought him there in order to complete his own knowledge, that whatever knowledge he has gained by self-effort doing sadhana, it has to be completed. So that was the reason why Divine Mother brought him here. and make her own child, Sri Ramakrishna, practice the Vedantic discipline with his help. So these two things had to be accomplished. That's the reason why Divine Mother Kali Bhavatarini bought this Totapuri so that he will complete his sadhana. Now he has seen that Nirakar Nirguna Parabrahma, he formless, attributeless, one without the second, non-dual knowledge he has attained. But it was his knowledge was not yet complete. So his knowledge was to be completed. And also another important thing which has to happen was her divine child, Sri Ramakrishna, was to be trained in this path by this Totapuri. That's the reason the inscrutable sport of Divine Mother, the Mother of the Universe, brought him there in order to complete his own knowledge and to make her own divine child Ramakrishna undergo Vedantic disciplines with his help. So now, arriving at the Kali temple, Totapuri came first of all to the big open portico of the Ghat on the bank of Ganga, wearing only one piece of cloth. Usually they wear the lion cloth. It's called Kaupinam. That is the only, you can see if you want to understand what is that. Ramana Maharshi, you can see Ramana Maharshi. You'll be always wearing only one piece of cloth that's called lion cloth. In Sanskrit, it is called Kaupinam. Kaupina. Shankaracharya has written one stotra itself. Kaupinavantam kalubhagyavantam. That Kaupina stotra itself is there. And in Hindi, it is called Langoti. The Hindi word, and also other languages in India, it's called Langoti. Sanskrit word is Kaupina. So he was wearing only one cloth on his body. Arriving at the temple, Totapuri came first of all to the big open portico of the Ghat, wearing only one piece of cloth. He used to be always roaming, no other cloth, whether it is winter, whether it is cold Himalayan, freezing cold. I think in one of the Gita classes or so, I had shown the video of one sadhu, just in Kaupinam, living in Himalayan caves, the Himalaya, with one dog. That video, recently it was taken by our army people, Indian army people who are posted at that altitude in the Himalayas. So he's living there, enjoying, rolling, nothing on his body, only one Kaupinam, that Kaupinam, one lion cloth, open body. He's just rolling on the ice. If you barefooted, you just go there, you may get this frostbite. And all your fingers may fall off, your nose may fall off, your ears may fall off in that so much freezing cold. Frostbite, you will get frostbite. But that sadhu is moving in the ice, which will come up to the knees, tipping his leg in just barefoot, and is rolling, somersaulting, enjoying the play of Lord in ice. That video is there on the YouTube. If you want, you can type it. The Indian army people, the army people with all the dress covering them, he has taken that video, living in Himalayas. Even now, people live there. So whether it is intense cold, whether it is intense hot, they are not bothered. They have only this much. Wearing only one piece of cloth, he came there, the lion cloth, Kaupinam. The master was then sitting in an absent-minded mood, looking like an ordinary person. He was sitting there. As soon as Totapuri's eyes fell on the master's face, when Totapuri saw Ramakrishna sitting there, he saw the face, he could recognize because he has that knowledge of Atman. So they could understand how much progress or what that person is a fit person for learning Vedanta. Totapuri could immediately recognize the moment he saw the face of Sri Ramakrishna. He's a fit person to get the knowledge of Brahman. So Ramakrishna was sitting there like a child, absent-minded mood, looking like an ordinary person. Who can understand? Even now, people cannot understand Ramakrishna. His own relative who was with him, Haladari, couldn't understand who he was. Many of us, at the most, we may think he's a saint, that's all. Who can understand that he's the Avatar Purusha, the great Avatar Purusha? But Totapuri could see, yeah, he's here, he's a fit person because he has already got that knowledge. As soon as Totapuri's eyes fell on the master's face, Ramakrishna's face, radiant with austerity, and beaming with the surge of devotion, Totapuri himself, the great realized soul, was attracted towards him and felt in his heart of hearts that he was not an ordinary person. The person who is sitting there in the form of that Ramakrishna is not an ordinary person, and that there were only few on this world, that there were only few who were so fit for Vedantic sadhana. Very few in this world to practice Vedantic sadhanas. Lord Krishna himself tells, the whole universe, only few are worthy to start Vedantic sadhana. Because Krishna tells in that Bhakti Yoga, only people without body consciousness can practice it. They should not have even an iota of body consciousness. So only such people can practice Advaita Vedanta or the Gnana Marga. So as soon as Totapuri's eyes fell on that master's face, radiant with austerity and beaming with a surge of devotion, he was attracted towards him and felt in his heart of hearts that he was not an ordinary person and that there were few who were so fit for Vedantic sadhana. Filled with curiosity and astonishment, Totapuri stepped forward and came up. See, this is unconditional love or unconditioned service. No condition. You don't need that somebody should invite you, somebody should give you money, somebody you will get something. The people who have realized God, everywhere it is unconditional love. He himself, the moment he thought that he is the fit person, no lajja, no bhaya, so he goes there. He himself goes and talks to him. That's why Ramachandra has one of the great character. Just like so many great nature was there, hidden in Sri Ramachandra, great qualities were there. It was to the perfection. So what was one of the qualities which is told in Valmiki Ramayana is Madhura Bhashi, the sweet way he used to talk, sweet, very sweet. Rama used to speak to other people, great sweetness. Everybody would be mesmerized by his sweetness. So Madhura Bhashi. And another thing is Prathama Bhashi. Prathama Bhashi means you will not wait for another person to come and talk to me or introduce. He will be the first person to go and talk and introduce himself and go and talk. So these are the qualities, great qualities of Sri Ramachandra given in Valmiki Ramayana. Madhura Bhashi, Prathama Bhashi. So Prathama Bhashi means no this thing, ego, telling that, oh, let him come and speak to me. Why should I go to him? Let him first speak. Why should I speak? I'm such a great person. I'm the king. No, no ego. Prathama Bhashi, he will go first and speak, introduce to him. Madhura Bhashi, very sweet. So all these things the Lord has told Ramachandra, has practiced all these things so that we can also practice them. That is the good nature. The Lord himself is showing. So we should also be like that. Madhura Bhashi, Prathama Bhashi. Give up your egos. Give up harshness. There is a Sanskrit shloka. Vachane ka daridrata. Do you have poverty for sweet words? Madhura Bhashi. To tell sweet language and sweet words, good words, soft words. Do you have poverty for that? You may be having poverty of money and so many other things. Do you have the poverty for sweet words? Vachane ka daridrata. Like that, Ramachandra is showing us that you should be Madhura Bhashi, Prathama Bhashi. You should be always very sweet to others. That you can do only if you give up your ego. If you have that dirty ego, how can you be sweet and how can you be Pratama Bhashi? Always a long face, always a serious face, serious demeanor, showing, spreading only sorrow to the world, trouble to others. Give up that ego. Oh, the Lord is showing through so many ways. Give up your ego. Give up your ego. Be soft. Be Pratama Bhashi. So now you can see that Totapuri stepped forward and came up to the master himself. So he didn't wait for Ramakrishna or anybody to invite him. He was attracted towards Ramakrishna and felt in his heart of hearts that he was not an ordinary person. Ramakrishna was not an ordinary person, and that there were few in this world who were fit for Vedantic sadhana. Filled with curiosity and astonishment, Totapuri stepped forward and came up to Ramakrishna, thinking, can there be such a fit aspirant for Vedantic discipline in Bengal? Why in Bengal, which is saturated with tantric practices? There is no Veda, there is no Vedanta. In such a state, can you find a person who is fit for Vedanta? Observing him carefully, he asked the master of his own accord, you seem to be a well qualified aspirant for Vedanta. Now, Ramakrishna knew Hindi very well. And now, Totapuri is also speaking to Ramakrishna in Hindi language. Ramakrishna was expert in Hindi, and Totapuri was also, his mother tongue was Hindi. He was originally from Punjab. So Punjabi might be his mother tongue, but he could converse very well in Hindi. So the master was being questioned by Totapuri, observing him carefully, asked the master of his own accord, you seem to be well qualified aspirant. Do you like to practice Vedantic disciplines? क्या वेदांत साधन करेंगे? So Totapuri is asking Ramakrishna, क्या वेदांत साधन करेंगे? So we will see what is the answer of Sri Ramakrishna and what will happen. How did Sri Ramakrishna practice Vedanta sadhana in our next session, that is tomorrow. Until then, we'll be waiting and meditating on this aspect of Sri Ramakrishna. So we are getting ready for Navaratri. So we'll be making the list of all the puja articles. Just like earlier, like Krishna Janmashtami and Ganesh Puja will be coming to your house to make you do the puja of Divine Mother. Navaratri is 9 nights and also Vijayadashmi, the 10th day. 10 days we'll be celebrating that. So all of you can participate in that Navaratri Puja. So we will end our session for today. If you have any questions, if you have any doubts, you can ask. Today is Sunday. No, sorry, not Sunday, it is Thursday. So if you have any questions, if you have any doubts, you can ask.
Namaste Maharaj, Aarti here.
Yes, Mother, Namaste. Any questions, any doubts? Okay, if you don't have any questions, if you don't have any doubts, I can close the session by the prayer.
Namaste Maharaj, Aarti here.
Yes, Mother, please tell.
Sorry Maharaj, my internet got
no problem. Please tell, Mother.
No, you are telling about the Madhura Bhasha, about Rama, no? Today's in the calendar, Swami Vivekananda's quote, the same thing is there where he says, by being pleasant always and smiling, it takes you nearer to God, nearer than any prayer. So I wanted to share that, Maharaj.
100%, there is no doubt about it. Ramchandra has shown us that Madhura Bhashi, Pratama Bhashi.
Yeah,
he will be the first person to come and speak and introduce himself, and also he will be very sweet. Yeah.
Yes, Maharaj. I just wanted to share that. Thank you very much.
Very good. Om Namo.
Om.
Any other questions or any other doubts? Okay. Om प्रियतां पुण्डरीकाक्षः सर्वयज्ञेश्वरो हरिः तस्मिन् तुष्टे जगत्तुष्टं प्रीणिते प्रीणितं जगत् हरिः ओम तत्सत् श्रीरामकृष्णार्पणमस्तु।